Welcome to Got Your Back, brought to you by DLR Vinyl Products. You know, nobody puts in wood windows or siding anymore, so we ask you, why would you build a wood fence or deck? Do it once with high-quality, maintenance-free vinyl. You can call my brothers, Rick here in Edmonton or Rob in Calgary at DLR Vinyl. Locations in both of the main cities in Calgary and in Edmonton. It's fantastic maintenance-free product. I've got a pile of it in my backyard, and I am enjoying the heck out of it as the weather has turned nice. Do it once, do it right. No staining, no sanding. DLR Vinyl has all your maintenance-free vinyl decking, fencing, and railing needs covered. Oilers dropped themselves into some kind of hole here in the Western Conference Final, dropping Game 3, a game that was there for the taking, as we say hello to Joaquin, Gage, and Craig Button, who makes the drive back and forth between Calgary and Edmonton and is on the road right now. Craig, whereabouts are you, pal?
I am just coming into the Edmonton airport. Just heading, I'm going to drive past it, but I'm right at the Edmonton airport. So, you know what? We did all our work after the game and, got out of town, and a lot of disappointed Oilers fans on this night. But, hey, they live, they fight for another day. And you know what the old saying is, we can only play it one at a time, and they just got to win one more game. That's the mantra that Jay Woodcroft says that they're going to play by.
Yep, no question. Gage, what'd you do for the game tonight, buddy?
Local establishment, Ryan.
Nice.
Was with a former first-round pick of the Buffalo Sabres watching the game, an old buddy of mine, Dave Cooper. So,
okay.
We kind of, it's fun because we played against each other a lot, even over in Europe, and just breaking down the game with another. And he was a defenseman, as a goalie, we argue a lot about certain plays and stuff.
Yeah.
So it makes for a fun evening, us together watching the game for sure.
How was the establishment when things went the wrong way? Were people? Yikes!
It was a roller coaster of emotions in this place, and it was it's not a huge place, so there wasn't too many people there. But yeah, it was ups and downs. I mean, when McLeod scored that goal, it almost felt like I was in the arena. But but then shortly after, obviously, it let the airs out of the sails, so to speak.
No kidding. Well, tons to get to, guys. So let's get to the breakdown, brought to you by Park Mazda, where the newly redesigned 2022 CX-5 has arrived. Check out the brand new all-wheel drive sport design trim with its turbocharged engine and see the available colors and trims in stock at parkmazda.ca. Craig, you and I sat 2 feet from each other and watched that game tonight. There was a ton that happened, but I think we should just rewind right to the beginning. Craig, my sense was the Oilers were a team that was ready to be shot out of a cannon tonight. They had so much momentum from that crowd. The energy in that building was unreal. A great start from Connor McDavid, and then Evander Kane with that hit.
Yeah, well, you described the game. The building is rocking. And then Connor McDavid, he comes off the bench. It's like he's shot out of a rocket ship. And away he comes, and boom, it's 1-0, and the place is alive. And, it's always alive at the beginning of a game, but it seemed more alive at that moment in time. And then just shortly after that, Evander Kane not only takes a 5-minute major, but Ryan, you and me talked about it. It takes Connor McDavid out of the game. It takes Connor McDavid out of any rhythm. The Colorado Avalanche are going on a power play. They don't even have to think, oh, where's Connor McDavid? And he's sitting right on the bench looking at the whole thing. I know they killed the penalty, and I know Jay talked about there was a momentum builder. I think the penalty killed momentum that they could have built, because when Connor McDavid starts off like that, there's no telling where he could end up.
It's almost to the point when even though they kill the power play, the Oilers do a great job for 5 minutes. I felt that the Avalanche were a little bit on their heels. Crowds rocking. McDavid scores that goal, but then just letting the skilled Avalanche players feel the puck and get comfortable. I think that was more detrimental than anything else. Even though they didn't score, it allowed the players of the Avalanche start getting some scoring chances. We saw how Makar just dominates at the blue line and what he can do and get comfortable in that type of situation. And it kind of boosted their confidence, I think, moving forward after that, because they were definitely a different team.
That's a great point, Gager, because, a lot of times you come into we've seen teams and good players come into a building here in Edmonton, Craig, and we've been here for these games. That crowd and that energy, that can make even the most sage veterans, a little bit jittery at times. And so you have 5 minutes to basically whip it around, get a bunch of feels, and really kind of settle into your game a little bit, just the comfort level, because the crowd, they kind of get taken out of it a little bit. With that said, I mean, what a kill. And how about Mike Smith in this game? Listen, we'll talk about that last goal, but Craig, they're not in this thing without Mike Smith.
Well, it's 2 games in a row now that Mike Smith, to me, has been outstanding. And, you look at the game 1 performance, he gets pulled, but at the same time, everybody is questioning how is he going to come back for game 2. He was excellent. And game 3 was excellent again. And he needed to be excellent because it's great to come out of that 5-minute penalty kill with no damage against you. But boy, there very well could have been a few or even 3 that could have ended up in the back of the net without his outstanding goaltending. Because there was a lot of good opportunities for the Colorado Avalanche, and he literally shut the door on them. And that keeps the game in a space where okay, we're not chasing it again, and we're not trying to catch up to a team that is in control. I thought that Mike, he gave the Edmonton Oilers a great opportunity to stay in the game and ultimately at the end to win the game.
Gage, your thoughts on Smith tonight?
Oh gosh, I'm I'm a little bit harsher than Craig is on Mike Smith, and I granted I do believe he was a major factor in keeping that game close, but I struggle with some, like I'm a little bit too critical for the goals against, and I think he gets himself into a little bit too much trouble at times. And the goals that were scored, I mean, I know the first one is a lucky bounce and just kind of, but I look at the second one and I look at the positioning and I look at the size of Mike Smith. I just feel that that's a save when we look at his counterpart this evening, where it was stationary, getting set, playing at the top of the crease. And I know the Avalanche had a way more dangerous opportunities to score, but I just think Mike Smith is sometimes his own worst enemy with a lot of these things, and he makes it very difficult on himself. You talk to goalies, like, we don't, for the most part, yeah, it's great to make a big windmill save, but we'd rather be in that good position where it's we're warming up our sternums more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Nobody would know that.
Ryan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ryan, I was going to say, hey, Joaquin, you know what? Here's what my note said about Mike. He's brilliant until he's not brilliant. So I wasn't trying to forgive him because I agree with you, and I think that's the difficulty with Mike. He's love his competitive spirit, battler. I mean, he gave away that one puck and he had to clean up his own mess, made a great save, and he makes all these great saves, and then he leaves himself vulnerable. And I think that's the thing about Mike that leaves people, oh boy, what are we going to get? And that can go period to period. It can go shot to shot. But I mean, that was my note tonight. He's brilliant until he's not. And so I might not have said it the same way, but I was focused in on that 5-minute power play. But you look at that winning goal. It's one of those ones like he's got to stop that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And at that point, I mean, look at what the other guy did at the other end, right? Look what Francouz did on that penalty kill. Connor McDavid, right point blank. He's diving across. And I mean, just really solid save. Maybe it wasn't as spectacular as the moment felt like, but he got across Gager and he got the glove up and he made a huge save in a big moment. And I circled it in my notes. And that was one of those remember that save moments from a backup goalie.
That was, and you might say he made that look easy, but when you break down his movement, his anticipation, and seeing where the danger was going to come from after a scramble play was picture perfect. It's a lot harder to stop, especially with your glove close to the shoulder and ear, than it is it's more outreach to your leg, right? So that was even a more impressive save in my mind when I saw it, especially from that camera angle behind, what he was able to do, because Connor put that in a great spot. Coming back against the grain, up against the ear like that. That's a phenomenal shot. And again, just man, this guy's playing really well, but didn't have tons of work, wasn't challenged getting in the face of him, I don't think, enough by the Oilers. So something to move forward with for sure.
So Ryan McLeod, scores a nice goal, uses his legs through the neutral zone. Francouz probably wants that one back, but whatever. McLeod scores a nice goal. But then, the Avalanche, they strike. And this is the way hockey is, guys. She's a cruel beast sometimes. Evan Bouchard rings one off the post and then gets beat in a battle. And Craig, when Evan Bouchard is on the power play, more often than not, he's out there with another defenseman. Not in this case. He switched off with Tyson Barrie mid-shift, and so it was him and 4 forwards. And I think there's a reason that Evan Bouchard is mostly on the power play with another defenseman. He's still learning some painful lessons about sense of urgency and how to defend in this league. And I mean, I'll be careful with my words here, but he just got schooled on the wall there by a guy that was ready to make a harder play. And Evan Bouchard got taught a tough lesson at a critical moment, and it cost them big time. And then Mike Smith needed to make that save.
Well, and Ryan, you make the point about, and Joaquin talked about it earlier, is that, you look at critical moments in a game, and you don't know which one's going to be the most critical. So you got to treat them all as most critical. And, Evan's out there, they're trying to get the 4 forwards out there with them. That creates a vulnerability. Well, then the next part happens where Comfort comes down the penalty box and there is a vulnerability. And then part of that growing process, that, learning and getting better and understanding the urgency of the moment. And that, hey, the teams that win are the ones that can go the hardest, the longest. JT Comfort showed that he was going to stay in the fight harder and longer than Evan Bouchard. Ends up being the winning goal and puts the Edmonton Oilers down 3-0.
Yeah, just when you look at the game on a whole, I think you can see that the Avalanche they had the better of the play for the most of the game. And to sum up this game for the Oilers, it's kind of like just a massive missed opportunity. I look at some of the chances that they had in tights, like I believe when Puljujarvi came around and wrapped it around and had the open chance for Fogle there were so many good chances for them.
Cassian in tight there.
Just so many different little places where they could have tied it, and even gotten the lead, right? So that's a good thing, I think, for the Oilers to say, hey, we did have our chances. We just have to bury some of these things. But yeah, that was a tough one to watch. Just the out battle. That's wanting it more than the other guy. And again, and then I make reference to Mike Smith's positioning, and then I see him perfectly top of the crease, all set, and then gets beat with one that goes under the left leg. So that was unfortunate. That's a save that's stoppable and that you needed in that situation.
Yeah, missed opportunity, I think, is accurate, Craig, because to me, more than any of the other games so far in this series, I thought this game was right there for the taking for the Oilers. Like, with basically, we know their season is basically on the line. Like, teams have come back before, but it's so rare. Everybody knew the magnitude of this game, and their season's on the line. And Craig, they were in this one. This one was there for the taking as much as any of these other 2 games had been.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree with you. And, when Ryan McLeod tied it up, it felt like Edmonton had a renewed sense of confidence and a renewed sense of energy. You're playing so long and it's 2-1 and you're not really getting any real, what I would call, significant extended play. And then boom, just like that, 2-2, crowds right back into it. And you'd almost see them just like trying to get a little hop in their step. And, that's where the opportunity to take it was. I mean, we talked about the save that Francouz made on McDavid coming across, and that's McDavid, and that's a heck of a save by Francouz. But there was some other opportunities. I know Bouchard hits the post, But, some of the shots were being blocked. I mean, you had Lehkonen blocking 2 of Tyson Barrie's shots. And, at some point in time, I was waiting for a fake shot, and I never saw one. I mean, watching the Rangers series and you watch Adam Fox, you're seeing all kinds of deception and fakes going on. And I would like to have seen a little bit of that, because I think trying to break down the Colorado Avalanche would have given them a better opportunity to end up on the right side of the score.
Greg, I'm going to completely rip off something that you do, because I watch you on a regular basis and half my material does come from you anyway. So, but you mentioned, this is a while ago, but your pyramid of success for an NHL team. And if I look at the 4 teams standing, they fit into that pyramid where goaltending is Vezina caliber. You have at least one defenseman that's in consideration for the Norris. And then you have that kind of duo up top. And if you look at all these teams from Tampa with Stamkos and Kucherov, you have Hedman, you have Vasilevsky. You look at the Rangers, same type of thing. Fox, Zibanejad, and the Oilers with Leon. And Mike Smith is a good, serviceable goalie, but they don't have someone like a Makar in that case to get them over that next level, right? So there are some missing pieces, I think, and the Oilers are the only team that I think don't fit into that pyramid of success, but they've had a ton. There's something to hang your hat on there for sure.
Well, I agree, Joaquin, about the Oilers. There's something to hang your hat on, and you also see, what the separators are, right? Like, just what allows a team to be a notch up. And I guess one of the questions that I haven't asked really very often in the last little while is, how did Lou Lamoriello trade Devon Toews? I mean, that's you watch him come into that team and you go, whoa.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like he was 26 minutes. Am I looking at this right? He was 26 minutes and 51 seconds tonight. 2 assists. Holy snap. Yeah, just an unbelievable. And what was it, a couple second rounds?
A couple of second rounds. And, I know they had, but can you imagine a blue line with Adam Pellich and Ryan Pulock, and then you would have Taves and Noah Dobson and Scott Mayfield as your 5th. Oh boy, talk about being able to match up against anybody. Lou's had a tremendous amount of success. He's not going to look back on that trade very fondly.
No kidding. All right, guys, time to get to the Average Joe's sound box. We want to hear what some of the principals involved were saying. Average Joe's is on Baseline Road in Sherwood Park. It's right next to Home Depot. And if you're looking for a place to watch Game 4 or just to stop, grab a drink somewhere, nice bite of food, Average Joe's is a great stop right next to Home Depot on Baseline Road in Sherwood Park. We're going to start, Zuby, with Connor McDavid. And McDavid was asked post-game tonight about kind of that sequence of events. A post gets hit, puck goes back the other way. Boy, those are the breaks in playoff hockey. So to our Average Joe soundbox, here's Connor McDavid.
It's a game of inches. Obviously it showed there. If that's an inch on the other side for Bush, it's in. We're up 3-2 and having a different conversation here. So, obviously, like I said, not a great situation, but not over.
Not over, but everybody knows the odds, and definitely a big hill to climb for the Oilers here. Let's get to the hit by Evander Kane. I will start, and we can just kind of go around the horn. I'm not sure if there'll be much discrepancy here. I hated it. I thought it was dirty. I thought it was dangerous. I thought it was not smart to make a play like that at that point in the game when your team had lots of momentum. I think there are lots of great things about Evander Kane and his physical game, and he's brought a lot of great elements physically that this group would not be where they are without him, but totally stepped over the line, ill-advised, dangerous at a bad time, and I do believe he should and will be suspended. Craig, you were up.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Ryan. You think back to the end of Game 2, and he was fired up, and he was in the mix in a couple of different areas, and I know talking to some of the Colorado Avalanche people, they said, he never shut up the whole game during game 2. He was, engaged verbally. We know he's engaged physically, but you got to be able to manage that. I mean, the game is emotional, and you're in the competitive arena, pun intended. But you've got to be able to manage that. And that play and the timing, Ryan, as you point out, is awful. It's awful because you have a chance to build on an early lead where you got the crowd right into it. Daryl Sutter said after game 3 of the Calgary-Edmonton series, he says, our guys weren't ready for this environment. He goes, we had a lot of guys that had never been in this environment. Well, Colorado did too, but they never had to go and experience it because they didn't get ramped up and get going. So the play is terrible. I think it's going to be a suspension. I think it should be a suspension. And the timing, I don't know if the timing could be any worse.
Yeah, I can't add anything more to that than you guys already have. It's just you see numbers, you push on the back with a cross check that far away from the boards. It's just too dangerous a play, and we saw what happened. This now one of the best players having probably his best season in the NHL is out for the rest of the series. Massive hole for the Colorado Avalanche. But what amazed me afterwards is the slack that was picked up by the rest of their team. That's a massive loss, and they didn't miss a step.
Val Nichushkin, I thought was great tonight. I mean, he's a beast. And if people remember back, I think he was picked the same draft year as Darnell Nurse. And I think the Oilers were giving him some consideration too, but I thought he was really good, Craig, in Kadri's stead. And the other question I have is, how was Evander Kane even in that hockey game still? I mean, it should have been 5 in a game all day long.
Well, I think that's one of the questions you would like to have hockey off to answer and say, hey, like, how did he end up in the game? Because when you look at the rule, a boarding penalty, it's a 5-minute major that results in an injury is a game misconduct. And it seemed that Wes McCauley was the one in charge of that one. I mean, him and Eric Talat, I guess it's a 2-man system, so it's not fair to say one. But, at the end of it, that is a question that we all have, and I haven't heard an answer to it as of yet.
We'll go back to the Average Joe soundbox quickly here. And Zuby, I believe we're going to have 2 clips back to back here. The first one, I believe, is Evander Kane on what happened, what he saw with the hit, followed by Avs coach Jared Bednar on the result.
Puck went wide, kind of dribbled into the corner, and I know he likes to reverse hit, and I was just trying to get a bump on him, and that's really all I did. Unfortunately, he went into the boards awkwardly and hurt his hands, but that was unfortunate.
Yeah, he's out. He'll be out for the series at least, if not longer. I mean, the hit, it's the most dangerous play in hockey. I mean, it puts him in head first from behind, 8 feet off the boards. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I agree with Jared Bednar on a couple of fronts. I believe that is the most dangerous play in hockey, shove from behind. I think there are certain times, Craig, on the ice when players are vulnerable and you're trusting one another to a degree not to do certain things, right? I get it's a competition and I get it's physical, but your careers are literally in each other's hands at certain moments in games. And I think you need to be careful with the way you handle those moments. And I can't stand the hitting from behind. I don't think the league has done a good job over the years of getting rid of it. I think they've been too lenient on it. But I hated that play, and we'll see if we'll see how heavy they come down on them. I would be fine with 2 playoff games in this situation. Is that too much?
No, well, I mean, I think that the type of play it is, the fact that it's resulted in an injury, could very well meet that level of suspension. And we know that it's a play we don't want. I like the way you frame that, Ryan. Is that it is a competitive game, and it's hard, and we want it to be competitive, and we want it to be hard. But you're right, and I love the way you framed it. That players trust that, like, we're going to play hard, but we're not going to take advantage of vulnerable players. We're not going to put players in unnecessary harm. And that's what Evander Kane did. And that's the thing that's just, there's no excuse for it. And bottom line, I've said this many a time, when a player has his back to you going into the board, it's not a dangerous player. The player is going into the boards with his back to the play. There's no way that player could be dangerous. And, for Evander Kane, again, I think it warrants not only a 1-game suspension, but Ryan, I'm with you. I think it meets the standard for 2.
Yeah, I think, it's playoffs. So if that's regular season, he's probably getting, I would say, 3 games for that, right?
Yeah.
And with the algorithm of playoffs, it's probably 1 game and that's it. But yeah, he'll be suspended for sure.
The fact that he didn't get booted out, had he gotten booted out, then maybe they say, okay, that's probably enough. He got most of that game but imagine if Evander Kane had scored an overtime winner or something in a game where he clearly shouldn't have been there. Like, man, oh man. Craig, we've seen it. Who was the last team? I think LA. Previous to that, was it Philly over Boston? Like, we've seen this before. We've seen this before. The chances, the percentages are not good. I guess maybe this is where Jay Woodcroft's 1 game at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 practice at a time, stay in the moment mentality. This is where he probably, there's some payoff to that because his message won't change. But this is a tall order, Craig.
Well, it's a tall order call it the best of times. It's a tall order, but it's even a taller order when you're playing a team that is as good as the Colorado Avalanche. Number 1, number 2. We're just talked about Evander Kane not being available. Deep well of forwards that are contributing. So you're going to take out a top goal scorer, Leon Draisaitl. He had a play tonight versus Nathan McKinnon. Jay Woodcroft thought it was a slow foot. I thought maybe there could have been a tripping penalty on it, but he left for a little stretch, limping. We know Darnell Nurse isn't 100%. Bottom line is, they just made a task that is already exceptionally difficult that much more difficult because Kane's out. You're down 3-0. You're playing against a very good team. You only have one choice. You got to play the next game, and you got to play it to the best of your abilities and with the amount of urgency and determination possible. That's all you can do, and then see what happens. Obviously, if you win, you get a chance to do the same thing again. But it all starts with the game on Monday evening.
There's a level still that the Oilers haven't reached yet. Granted, if there is a suspension with Kane, that level is harder to get to. But I do think there's a physicality level that we saw with Edmonton in the first 2 series, and I know that I think the Avalanche having such an elusive defensive core makes it that much more difficult to establish that kind of more aggressive forechecking style. But I do think they can reach that level, and I'd like to see that against the Avs and just more of a body punching offensive puck retrieval team that we saw in the past 2 rounds. And I just haven't seen that yet. And then maybe it's the Avalanche being too good and avoiding that, but I still think there's a level that they can reach.
Imagine the frustration, and I know the 3rd round is different, but of having your season end 2 years in a row with a sweep where you don't even make it competitive in the series. I think that'd be a tough pill for this core group to swallow. Awesome stuff, guys. That was the breakdown brought to you by Park Mazda, your dealer for life in Sherwood Park off Y Road. Visit parkmazda.ca. So I'm so grateful that you guys were able to join me on somewhat short notice. You guys know why this is the Rishaug, Gage, and Button podcast tonight, because my co-host sent a text this afternoon. Full disclosure, Craig, he admitted he was going to the game tonight as a fan and would be in no condition to do a podcast post-game. So Struddy apparently was living it up in that crowd tonight.
Well, hey, listen, you get into a crowd like that, the environment, it's Saturday. We know the game started at 6 p.m. The real question for Struddy is, what time did he start?
Exactly. You've seen him in action, Gager.
I don't know when it started, but I know when it ended. As soon as he got home, that guy can't handle those China whites. Too many of those, he's done. Poor
Does he
Sona.
buckle hard? Is he he craters?
Yeah,
You've seen this?
It's not a good sight, man. It's not a good sight. No one wants to see that.
Awesome. Well, both he and Terry Ryan were just totally unreliable tonight. So that's why I went to my two good buddies, my two of my most reliable buddies. Thanks, guys. This was really fun. I hope to have you on the podcast again soon.
My pleasure, Ryan. And it was a pleasure to join you too, Mark. You're doing fantastic work. Just keep doing it and bring your passion and your knowledge and your perspectives.
Oh, thanks, buddy. I really appreciate that. Keep up the good work yourself. I love listening to you as well.
All right. Enough with the Mutual Admiration Society. I don't know if you guys have heard this podcast. It's got a really nice title, but we try not to be so polite to each other. So everybody just be on your way. Craig, safe travels, my friend. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Gager, cheers.
Yeah, for sure. Have a great day.
Boys.
Thanks.
Hey, Strutty, question for you. Have you ever tried putting in your own fence?
I sure have. Between digging the posts, mixing up cement and digging the holes, it's absolute killer.
It's brutal on the back. Well, listen, what if I told you you could put in a fence without having to dig a hole or mix any concrete?
I'd be much more likely to come over and help you out.
Yeah, well, you're not the first guy I would call, but thank you for that. Listen, my brother's company, DLR Vinyl Products, they've come up with a system where you can actually put high-quality vinyl fence in the ground without having to dig a hole, without having to mix any concrete. They can teach do-it-yourselfers how to do it, and they can also work with contractors who might be looking to start installing vinyl. It's super high-quality product. The great thing about it is that it has fantastic longevity. You put it in, you don't have to worry about staining or sanding or anything like that. I've been lucky enough, Strutty. They've put in multiple fences in my different yards and they've built me 3 decks. I have totally abused the fact that my family is in the fencing and decking business, but it's great product. Give Rob a call in Calgary or Rick a call here in Edmonton. This is a company my dad started. It's a family business. I'm super proud of it, and I'm very proud that they are our title sponsors. That's DLR Vinyl Products in Edmonton and Calgary.
Hey, it's Ryan Rishaug. While many are feeling the sting of inventory shortages, Park Mazda has you covered. They've got new Mazdas arriving every month, including the redesigned 22 CX-5 in whatever color you're looking for. They've also got a huge selection of used vehicles with new arrivals every week and some of the most competitive interest rates on cars, trucks, SUVs, and more. Park Mazda, your dealer for life in Sherwood Park, off Y Road. Schedule a test drive at parkmazda.ca. Folks, golf season is just around the corner, and I don't know about you, but I am some kind of fired up over it. It's the perfect time to get yourself fitted for new clubs or some great new apparel. Well, DeBoers has you covered for all of it. Their facility is first class with amazing TrackMan technology in their simulators and top-of-the-field fitting specialists. You can order now for spring delivery, and they've also got a bunch of new 22 apparel for you to go check out. It's a fantastic group down there at DeBoers. The shop has a great positive feel. I highly recommend you check them out on the corner of 53rd Street and 99th Avenue. DeBoers, helping you play better golf since 1999. Average Joe's Sports Bar in Sherwood Park has proudly served the community and supported minor sports in the area for almost 20 years. It's a great gathering place for sports fans. Average Joe's has massive big screen TVs, comfortable seating, and a friendly staff waiting to make your experience anything but average. Come check it out on Baseline Road, right next to Home Depot, or make a reservation by calling 780-417-1113. That's Average Joe's on Baseline Road in Sherwood Park.
All right, time now for Who's Got Your Back, brought to you by DeBoers Golf Shop and Fitting Center. All of your golf needs, they've got your back for them. It's a fantastic facility, DeBoers is. They got TrackMan simulators. They've got a putting green there. Whatever area of your game you need to get some work done on, go see the gang down at DeBoers. They can pretty much help you with anything. They're huge Oiler fans. I guarantee you they'll be rattled by this result. Scott and Al and the gang down there are not going to be happy, but they're diehard fans, and they will be cheering until the bitter end. All sorts of apparel, if you need a bag, clubs, putter, equipment, supplies, it's a great shop. Nice and big. It's got everything you need. Go down there, talk some hockey, pick up some stuff for your golf game. That is DeBoer's Golf Shop and Fitting Center. Really excited with my guest today. Just found out last week that after a fair amount of time away from radio, he was going to be getting back on the air. And I am speaking, of course, about Dave Jamieson. JMO and I have been buddies for years and years. This goes back to, early 2000s when he was the director of communications for the Edmonton Eskimos at the time, now the Elks. And he was that guy that was in charge of the relationship between the players and the media. He was a problem solver, and he was the best at it in his time with that organization. Eventually made the switch and is on air on TSN 1260 radio here in Edmonton, the Dave Jamieson Show, of course, from 12 to 2. Dave had a tough year. He got a cancer diagnosis and some significant time away as he was taking care of that. But what I loved about the way JMO handled things was he was just really honest and open about everything that he was going through. He wanted to share his experiences because he knew there were lots of other people out there that were going through similar. And it was both therapeutic for him, but also understanding that it might help others. And so he was open about what he was going through, and it was not easy. And his career very much was in jeopardy because the type of cancer he had affected his voice. But he has battled back, and it's absolutely inspiring. And I'm so happy to have him on today to talk a little bit about his journey, a little bit about an exciting change to his radio show on TSN 1260, bit of a change in programming that people will be very interested to hear if you haven't heard what's set to start next week, and to give us a Who's Got Your Backstory. So presented by DeBoer's Golf Shop and Fitting Center, here is Dave Jamieson. Could not be happier to welcome to the podcast for the first time my good friend, longtime friend, and now TSN co-worker Dave Jamieson. JMO, great to see your face, my friend. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing much better than I have been, and that's we'll get into that, I'm sure. But it's wonderful to be with you, and congratulations on the new venture.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's funny because I just started the interview by saying, Dave, how are you? And you and I just finished a long discussion because we get into discussions. We're both guys that do radio and do interviews about the value of the beginning of an interview, asking your subject, how are you doing? Now you do a radio show. You've done it for years. I'm just starting as a podcast host. You believe it's unnecessary. I feel like I have no choice but to ask that question. So should I be doing it for my podcast?
Well, okay. I'm going to put this up on the hoist and have a look and root around in the art of interviewing. But where I come out on this, Ryan, is if someone is, healthy enough, gracious enough to join you on a podcast or on a radio show, I'm going to assume that they are good out of the gate, unless, of course, they've had something that's befallen them that you should ask them at some point in the interview. But I always feel like the how are you, then they have to answer with, well, I'm fine. How are you? Yeah. And so you're kind of doing, Federer and Nadal across the net.
Because we just did that. I said, how are you?
Exactly. And you sucked me in. So Dan Patrick, who I go down the rabbit hole watching his interviews, and he's really a master in the art of doing not just a sports interview, but an interview. And he rarely starts with how are you? He gets right to it. And sometimes will surprise a guest, but they get into it. And I always look at it as don't waste a question. Right. Just don't waste a question. That's all.
Yeah. And it's in your contract. I'm only allowed to ask you 6 today. So I've now wasted 2. 1, how are you? And 2, was it okay to ask how are you? So now I'm down to 4 questions.
Treat it like Ryan, like you're on the power play. Just make the shots count.
Get it to the net. Get it to the net for sure.
Exactly.
So Dave, it's great to see you, buddy. And fantastic that you're back on air here. And I know you've kind of made the rounds, and I love the fact, Dave, that from the moment, for those who don't know, Dave is a cancer survivor. Mm-hmm. And from the moment you were diagnosed, I remember we talked early on in that process. It always struck me, Dave, how open you were about what it was you were going through. You put it out there for everybody. You took us along on the journey with you. I know a lot of that was probably because that's what felt like the right thing to do for you, but I also know for a fact you were doing it for other people as well, because you knew others were going through that. But just, take us through what the diagnosis was and what your process was, and just what a crazy, difficult ride it was for you, my friend.
May 25th of 2021, I went to my doctor for the first time. I had noticed the week prior that I had a thickness on the left side of my neck.
Yeah.
And I'm a guy that shaves every day. It's non-negotiable. I grew up in an Army family, and it's just something you did. So I noticed something was off. I felt fine. I felt good. But I went to my doctor, and he came in, put me in the on the table, as it were, and he ran his hand down my neck, and he left the room really quickly. Didn't say a word. Came back in, and he said, okay, I've got 10 days of penicillin, take these, whatever you have might go away, or you might have cancer. And I'm like, whoa, stop.
Whoa.
What was the second thing? What was the second option? And he ordered me for an ultrasound the next day. Got those results back, I think, in 2 days. Next thing I knew, like 2 days after that, 3 days after that, I was in Fort Saskatchewan getting a CT scan. And this was all going rapidly, very fast. I hadn't had time to process. When you hear the word cancer applied to you for the first time, you're set back, you're knocked back, you're blown away. So we got the results on June 5th. I got a call just after 2:00 from my GP. He said, you have cancer. And it was obvious, like you get that call and then you have to make the calls. And I had to call my 3 children, Lindsay, Abby, and Danny, who are all adults. And I'd taken them along on the ride early. I wanted them to let them know with each step what was happening to their father. But this was the confirmation, because everyone's hopeful that it's just something can be dealt with. So, and a few days after that, I'm in the office of Dr. Vincent Biron at the U of A, an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, and brilliant. And we got a biopsy, and I learned I had a 3-centimeter tumor on my area where my left tonsil used to be. I had it out when I was a little kid. And it was HPV, which is the sexually transmitted cancer. My surgeon told me it was very likely could have been in me for about 40 years, just looking for a place to call home. Mm-hmm. And it found a home. And so he recommended surgery, followed by aftercare, chemo or radiation, one or the other, or maybe both. And so we were off and running. And I underwent a 5-hour surgery on July 30th of last year, and it has changed my life. I was opened up, not to get overly graphic for your viewers and listeners, but when he says an incision, Ryan, there's something I learned early. One man's incision is another man's really big cut.
Yeah.
And I was opened up from behind my left ear to my chin. That's a lot of real estate.
Wow.
Went in, they took out the tumor. They took out some area around it and a bunch of lymph nodes. And so now I'm lozenge guy, because I'm always with the dry mouth. Yeah. But I had to relearn how to swallow. In the hospital, I was there for 10 days. When I got out, then I was given a few weeks to recover. And I started radiation on September 13th at the Cross. Yeah. And I did 5 days a week for 6 weeks. I wore this mask, called it my Jerry Cheevers. And I wore my Jerry Cheevers every day over my head and shoulders, and it was intense. It's some of the worst radiation you can get. Mm-hmm. And I lost my voice for about a month. I lost my ability to swallow again, and I had to have a feeding tube inserted through my nose, and so I could get enough nourishment, because they were worried I was going to a point where I was almost edging towards anorexia, because I was so averse to food. Right. And I was struggling, Ryan, badly. And I was struggling very badly mentally, because I felt like I was losing. And even though they were great at the Cross and they were reassuring and kind and empathetic, I was really in a bad place. And I got down to about 137 pounds at my lowest. And, I wasn't in a great place. And then, it ends. The radiation ends, you ring the bell, and you go home. Yeah. And you try and get better. And it's a long, long process, and I'm still in it.
Yeah. And I've, we've been in touch and keeping tabs along the way, and I've watched you go through it, Dave. And again, you've been so open and out there. Where did that come from? That need to put it out there for people to go on the journey with you? Was it helpful for you? Was it because you wanted to help others? I imagine, like I said, it was a combination, because the whole thing was really quite inspiring, to see you go through and for you to be open about it the way you were.
Well, there's a couple of, and that's a great question. So allow me to go at it sort of two distinct ways. One of the reasons I wanted to go at it was, and I haven't shared this with many people, but I will with you. My late brother was in prison for a number of years.
Okay.
And I was fairly young, or I think it was late elementary, early high school. And that occurred at a time in my life when, you've got friends and you're largely an open book. And that was something I kept away from people. Only a very few people knew in my life, my friends, that was something in my world. And so, flash forward many, many years, and now I have, an illness, and I'm a public figure on some level. And I thought, well, look, I've done the other route where I've tried to keep everything hidden. And I think there's some value in me sharing. I didn't want to go gory detail every time, like every time I had a blood test or every time I did this and that. But I just thought if I could hit some markers along the way to let people know who care about me and have expressed their, concern, to update them in a way I could, but also then to help others. And, and to be completely candid, I'm, connected with some people now who are also going through what I have been through and just helping them. They'll send me a note saying, God, I am really struggling with my saliva, or what did you eat at this point in the journey? And so it's an exchange of ideas. And Ryan, people like you checking in, people would send me a quick note. Man, that counts more than you'll ever know. How are you today? Do you need anything? I can't put a price on that because those would arrive at some really bad times.
Dave, you've lived your life in a way where you've treated the people around you extremely well. You've always been good to people. You've always treated people with respect. And so I'm really glad to hear that when you were in need, there was a lineup of people that were there for you. But you earned that, my friend. That's what you earned by all those years of treating people the way you did.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that everyone was there for you. The name of the podcast is Got Your Back. You and I discussed it ahead of time. I remember talking to you, asking you if it was a good idea to this theme of my podcast. You were a huge help to me in putting this podcast together. You and our good friend, Bryn Griffiths, who's also been down a similar journey to yours. So you were a big part of me piecing this thing together and having the confidence to go through with, this theme and this storytelling and, this basic idea. So I'm really excited to have you on and ask you for your story, Dave. When I say that to you, what story pops into your mind? Who had Dave Jamieson's back?
I'll tell you who had Dave Jamieson's back, and he's had it a couple of times over the years, and he is a dear friend. I hold him in the highest esteem, and that's Hugh Campbell, the former president, the general manager, and the head coach of the 5-in-a-row dynasty of the Edmonton Eskimos. And forgive me, I will use that term alternating with the Elks. Hugh Campbell hired me to do my previous job, which turned out to be vice president of communications and broadcast and marketing for that club many years ago. I was not in a great place in my life, professionally and personally. Hugh hired me to do a job in Hugh style. There was no job description, just kind of like, well, you'll figure it out. And so off I went, and 14 years in that job. I became very close with his family, and I will never forget getting that opportunity when there weren't a lot of people lining up to hire me, either in that industry or the one I'd come from, broadcasting. I've been a broadcast executive, program director. I've been on air. I've worked in Vancouver, where I'm from, and it was not a great time. And so that job allowed me to really kind of recalibrate, head off in a different direction. Still working with media, which is a love of mine, and communications, but also learning new things like marketing, advertising, and also professional football. So Hugh Campbell had my back then, and flash forward to June 5th, I forget time. I get all of a sudden I see his phone number pop up on my phone, and there's Hugh Campbell staring back at me. One of the first people to say, I love you. You mean a lot to my family. We've had great laughs over the years, telling me what he thought of me. And it was hard not to cry getting the call from Hugh, because I just had the news, but he was one of the first down the chute to be right there. And so I will never, ever forget the first opportunity, obviously, and then what he did there upon learning of my cancer.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And it's, you never know who it's going to be, right? The people in our lives at times where, man, things are tough and you're not sure which way it's going to go. And then all of a sudden, boom, somebody just has you. Somebody's got your back and sets you on a course. And you made a lot of good with that opportunity he gave you there, Dave. So for people that don't know, your job with the Eskimos, now Elks, all those years, you were the communications guy, but part of that job is being the troubleshooter. You were like the Ray Donovan of, of that organization for a lot of years. I'm not going to ask you to tell any crazy tales out of story.
But I can imagine. Open book.
Well, I mean, I can imagine you ran into some situations and you had to be a little bit of a fixer. Can you share anything with us? You don't have to name names even, but where you had to go all Ray Donovan on a certain situation.
Well, I mean, these were public situations. I mean, there were things that happened. Ryan, I'm not going to say it was a better time. It was an interesting time because of the personalities I got to work with.
Yeah.
And there was a stabbing or two. There was somebody held up at knife point. There's one of our players who ran down someone who stole his mountain bike, and our player beat this person with the mountain bike. Those things. But there was the one I go to a lot is the Alfred Payton assault case.
Right.
I won't go into granular detail on it, but it involved a parking lot, a restaurant, two people disagreeing. And anyhow, it ends up that Alfred goes to court unrepresented. And he does it on the 2 days before Breakup 2002 here in Edmonton. I'm at the practice. There's national media. You were probably there.
I was there
in the practice field watching us go through our paces to get ready for the game. And my phone, probably a flip phone back in 2002, rings, and it's a representative of the Edmonton Police Service. Very nicely says, Dave Jamieson, yes, I'm so-and-so from the Edmonton Police Service. I just want you to know that one of your players just appeared in court. And I say, pardon? Right. And he goes, yes, Alfred Payton is one of your players, and he was in court. I say, okay, well, can you tell me why and why today? And, and so what Alfred had not sought a lawyer or not been given one and gone represented himself. And so all of a sudden I have to fly into damage control on some level, even though it's public record that he has appeared. Someone's going to find it, and they did. And, that one there was kind of wild because then he ended up leaving Canada, going back to the States and returning. And we had to go through the whole legal process again because we were trying to get it thrown out based on him not having representation. So I had to take Alfred to the lawyer every day. So it's yours truly in my triple pleated khaki pants and my Eskimo golf shirt, putting a 6'6" guy in my Toyota Corolla and driving him to his lawyer. And I had to take notes. And he would say, you get him to the lawyer and take notes. And then when we had to go to court, I used to have to walk him down the street to the courthouse. And I had to say to him, Alfred, don't try and punch the cameraman.
Yeah.
That are trying to take your picture. Just don't, please. Let's not make this worse than it already is. Oh, yeah.
Man. And you got him through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, you're the guy that, if a player ever found himself in trouble, they pick up their flip phone and they're calling Dave Jamieson. So for years and years and years, you were that guy and you were the main media liaison between, the players and the media. Managing those situations and
relationships, and Ryan, that's a key thing. And it because you live in this every day. Those are relationships.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't have to be best friends, but I think there is a high level of respect that's required, right? Because you're trying to do a job and broadly, the media.
Yeah.
In many cases, I use the term and people hated it, but I said, I am a lubricant. And they're like, ooh. I said, no, just hear me out. I'm like an engine oil, if you prefer that term.
Sure, that's better. Go with that.
Keep this thing moving, and let's get to the finish line.
I remember. We cannot tell this story, but I remember. How can I put this? I don't want to sound unprofessional or get myself fired right now.
Right.
I almost ended up in a scrap with another reporter out in a parking lot one day, and you were the one that stepped in and calmed the waters, if I recall, and allowed.
Yes.
Now, I was not being the aggressor, is all I will say. I was not being the aggressor, and
Duly noted.
things needed to be handled, but I love the way you stepped in and handled that situation. So you kind of had my back there too. I was young and cocky.
Well, you were, and I recall it distinctly. You were absolutely right for your position.
Yes, well, I appreciate that. So listen, exciting news at the station. So 2 bits of exciting news. First, that you are back on air now.
Well, thank you.
And Matthew Iwanek did a fantastic job. He's an amazing talent that did a great job on the airwaves in your stead, and he remains a big part of your show. But you are combining forces, and it's starting next week on 1260. What can you tell us? I'm sure you guys have been talking about it, but what's the plan? What's this going to look like for the new look?
Well, the new look will be
10 to 12, 10 to 2?
Two old guys, one new show. And it's Low Tide and I, Alan Mitchell, who has been doing his show and doing it very well for many years. He's a terrific writer for The Athletic. He's been, he's sort of the gray eminence of blogging in our community in terms of the Oilers and hockey. And so Alan and I are going to do a 4-hour show with Iwanek as the producer, and he will interrupt as he often does and jump in, and we'll have some fun.
Get some soccer in there.
Yeah, put some. Yes, it's mandatory. It's part of the daily nutrients. And so, I'm excited. I mean, we're laughing. We're calling it. Let's hope it's not one of those super teams that like the New York Rangers pre-Cap era, where you buy everyone and then none of it works. I think this is a lot of salary cap. Going to be fun. Oh yeah. And so. Well, I think we're going to do, I know we're capable of doing smart conversation around sports, have some fun, self-deprecating, and also have interesting guests, which, is, Ryan, as you know, there's lots of great people out there analyzing and writing. They don't often always translate into good radio, but you know what? The idea that we can stretch out 2 hours goes fast. And it's a sprint. And you often feel like you've sort of cheated, sometimes yourself and sometimes your audience, because you can't get to stuff in enough detail before you're, you're off to the next thing. So we'll try and keep it tight and fast paced, but loose enough to allow personality to be a part of this, as it should. And, radio done well is personality driven. So we'll get after that starting Monday from 10 a.m. to 2 Mountain Time. And have some fun.
That's awesome. I'm really excited for it. I love the mix. I love the mix for a couple of reasons. One, I agree with everything you said about LT. He is sage. He is calming. He's a fan, but he's very good at calming the fan base when things get frenetic. He always has kind of a nice way of breaking things down to kind of settle things. And he adds really good perspective. Right. You are salty enough at times, and you have a cold enough. Your sense of humor is like dry in a way that is. The combination of the two of you is going to be really interesting. Then you got Matt being Matt. That's an absolute beauty. That's going to be great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, buddy. And the other thing I want to say is that I love our radio station here in town. I do. I think it's important. I think it's dedicated talk radio all day long about the teams and the things that sports fans in this community care a lot about. And I think it's great. I love that we have it. And I hope fans and hockey fans and, sports fans in this town, get behind it, because it's important and it's awesome. And we're really lucky. We really are lucky to have a dedicated sports radio station in this, because not every city has it. We've seen some go by the wayside in other cities, and we're so fortunate in this city to have all day sports talk.
And the city itself is 1 million plus people. So it's not the largest place, but it punches over its weight, Ryan, in terms of what sports matter, and how they matter. The Oilers, yes, the Elks, yes. And just a feeling that, and the conversation around it. When I moved here from Vancouver 26 years ago, and I'd done talk radio out there. I'd done sports talk radio. I was Dan Russell's backup host for 2.5 years, covered the 94 Canuck run. And I know coming here, just sort of the hockey IQ is up a notch or two in Edmonton. Yeah. And so, I think the fact that we dedicate as much time as we do to talking about them is reflective of the fact that people want that. And, the exchange of ideas and opinions and stuff, it's a lot of fun. And you're right. I think we're better for having it.
Yeah. Dusty's show in the morning, right into you guys. right into Gregor. We got Gazzola doing the pre and post shows during the season. There's lots of really good, unique content, and it's awesome. So Dave, so thrilled that you're back on the air. So thrilled to see you doing so well, my friend.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking some time to hop onto the podcast and share a story with us.
Oh, I do appreciate the time, Ryan. Best of luck with this. And obviously, we follow you closely and all the stuff you do on TSN.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. By the way, if you need guests on the show, let me know. Like, I'd love to hop on, talk a little hockey or a little football or whatever with you and LT. That'd be great.
Done.
And you're allowed to ask me how I'm doing when the segment starts, Dave. Like, we're allowed to show people that we're friends here, buddy.
Right. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah. I'll relax it a bit.
It's old school. I love it. It's why we love you, JMO. We'll talk soon, my friend.
Take care. See you, Ryan.
Always so good to catch up with Dave Jamieson. We've had many phone calls over the years where we have debated all sorts of different things, ridiculous little things about the industry, about the media, about communications, the teams. Just really, really value those conversations that Dave and I have been able to have over the years. I'm so happy for him that he's back where he belongs, and that is on the airwaves on TSN 1260 radio here in Edmonton. So thank you, Dave, for sharing that story with us. We are so proud of you and the courage you have shown, and love the fact that you are back on air, my friend. Can't wait to hear the new show with you and Low Tide. Combined, the two of you will be unstoppable and old school, which nothing wrong with that. That's going to wrap up the podcast, folks. Big thanks to our sponsors, DLR Vinyl Products. Those are my brothers, Rick and Rob, locations in Calgary and in Edmonton. If you have any need for vinyl products, Park Mazda. I drive a CX-5, and I absolutely love it. It's got lots of power, good gas mileage, and the crew down at Park Mazda takes such great care of all of their customers. Belvan Construction, if you have any commercial construction or renovation needs, Les and the crew over there have been around for a couple of decades. They do high quality work, so real happy to have Belvan Construction on board. And of course, DeBoer's Golf Shop, Scotty McNabb, Al DeBoer, the whole crew over there, always taking such great care of people as they come through the door with a smile and some conversation. That's a real positive place with great energy. Encourage you to head down there. And of course, Average Joe Sports Bar in Sherwood Park. What a great spot to grab some wings, grab some food, grab a few beers, whatever you want, and watch the game or just hang out with friends. It's right next to Home Depot in Sherwood Park. Well, Oilers have dug themselves quite the hole. I don't know. It's going to be kind of one game at a time, right? Trying to dig themselves out. You know, the LA Kings, people probably thought it never would have been possible. They did it. The Flyers did it, not too long ago. I believe it was against Milan Lucic and the Boston Bruins. It's not impossible. It's just really, really improbable. And we'll see if the Oilers can fight off elimination and make a series out of this. I think we all know that it's a long shot, but it's been fun watching them so far, and we look forward to at least one more game, Game 4 on Monday night here in Edmonton. Thanks for your downloads. Thanks for your support. We continue to have tons of fun here on the podcast, and we're going to keep her going. So stick with us. This has been Got Your Back, presented by DLR Vinyl Products.